The recent fire, which has engulfed and destroyed Notre Dame Cathedral in France, has displayed, in my view, a lot of hypocrisy. Hypocrisy on two levels. Firstly, the hypocrisy of French secularism, and secondly, the hypocrisy of quote and unquote religious people. And I want to just explain that a little bit, because I think it is quite worrying, and almost I can feel some sort of anger within me when I hear matters related to this. First of all, Notre Dame is a cathedral, it's a religious building, it's a religious icon and relic of France. At the same time in which France is clearly secularist, it's irreligious, it's against religion in many ways, it's against religious identity. And we've seen that in many aspects, and it's almost part of its heritage in the Renaissance against religion. But now, once this religious building has burnt and so much people have wept about it, we see that there are secularist leaders and figures within France who have actually come out to mourn this religious building, and not only that, but also promise to restore the building to its glory and so on. And that in itself quite disturbs me, because on the one hand, a country which is clearly against religion, fighting religious symbolism. Many years ago they banned the hijab in schools and so on, or religious symbols, and even more recently the whole issue of the burkini, and a couple of years ago, also shows that kind of continuity. But now, once this building has burnt, which again it cannot be described except as a religious building, it's almost like a secularity of that country is just being thrown aside in attempt to it's difficult, really. It's almost bewildering to explain how these two things marry up. Secondly, in the same way, it shows that even though France is a-religious, against religion in many ways, yet there is that link still to its Christian roots. I would very much doubt that if a mosque burnt down in France in the same way, whether there would be such a commitment to restore that mosque, irrespective of how old it was, even if it was 1,000 years old. Because even though France has rejected religion, it still has more probably an attraction towards or an association towards religion and the religion of Christianity rather than other religion. And that's something, a point that I made a couple of years ago when we discussed about the burkini, when we were saying that Muslim women were forced to take off their burkinis on the beaches of France because they were religious symbols. Yet, if a nun was walking down the beaches, would she have been exposed to a similar kind of violent threat, at gunpoint, to take off their clothes? So I think that's also displays a bit of hypocrisy in terms of attitudes towards religion. Secondly, the hypocrisy of religious people, I say that in quotation marks, in regards to the within a couple of days, we've seen, hearing today on the news, that there's about 800 million euros that has been raised to restore a building, 800 million, and obviously continues to rise, to restore, bricks and mortar and these stones, to pay for a building, to pay for an inanimate object, to pay for a building that's I mean, it's a piece of art. It's something for people to admire, to look at. Yet, there are hundreds and thousands, indeed millions of people in the world today who are starving. People who are going to bed without any food, in some cases not even clean water. People who don't have shelter. And yet there is more focus on raising money for a building rather than raising money for people who are in need. And this is not just about Christianity. It's not about cathedral. It's something that even happens, and I say that regrettably as well, with Muslim organizations, and sometimes some of the leaders of mosques in the UK who actually give priority to their own mosque. They want to raise funds for their mosque, and they would deny many times charities who are raising money for people who are poor and destitute throughout the countries. They'd rather give and rather open the gates and the avenues to donate for their mosque, and sometimes spending ridiculous amounts on the mosque in terms of its architecture, in terms of its style, tiles, expensive carpets, this and that, rather than using that same money to help people who are in need, which goes against the essence of Islam. And this is something that also disturbs me, because when you look at the Prophet ﷺ, and not just the Prophet, but all the prophets, Prophet Muhammad, Jesus, Moses, Ibrahim, all the prophets, they preached the importance of community, and there's more value given for helping people rather than helping buildings. It's a sign of the times. The Prophet ﷺ said that people will decorate their mosques and show off their mosques. When you look at the Prophet's mosque, it was a very simple, basic building. It had no dome, there was no minarets, and it actually leaked when it rained. Yet this simple, basic building was the illumination for the rest of the world. And that's why Medina is Al-Madinah Al-Munawwarah, the illuminated city, because from this mosque, men and women emerged who took the peace and justice of Islam throughout the world. And that's what's important. It's the people, not the buildings, that we need to invest in. So I find it really disturbing when I see mosques in the UK. They don't allow charities to collect. They'd rather collect for their own mosques. And not only that, we see that the extravagance in some Arab countries and other Muslim countries, who spend, again, millions upon millions of pounds and dollars on decorating the mosque, expensive chandeliers, expensive tilings, expensive engravements, all that kind of thing, to show off the mosque when there are people starving. A mosque is a place of worship. You just go there. Even the mosque in Islam is very basic. There's no chairs, no furniture, nothing. Just an area, just a space. Go there to worship Allah, to listen, to read, etc. There's no need for extravagance. Until everybody is, there's no more poverty in the world, then okay, yeah, spend your money on these tiles that you so like, or these luxurious carpets and so on. These are a few thoughts that I wanted to show, and I think the burning of Notre Dame, even though it is unfortunate to see a building like this to come to ruins, but in many ways it has exposed the hypocrisy related to France particularly, and also to people who claim to have religious ideals.